Well, we got a ton of comments after the last video on Monday, the last podcast. And a lot of it stems back to, are the Toronto Blue Jays just cheap?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel right now, because new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As always, I'm Braden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasko. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And if you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, we appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. It's free to do so. You might as well. Helps us out. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers. Almost there. You guys have been absolutely knocking it out of the park. So you might as well join the community. Give us your comments, your feedbacks down below. Again, hit the subscribe button, even if you are listening anywhere else, because we've sort of made YouTube the hub. So you get your podcasts, your videos, your shorts, sort of whatever, your live streams, if anything crazy happens, which in Blue Jays land, it just seems to never happen. As well, Discord link is down in the description. Carter's been quite active in there over the past few days. So make sure if you guys got questions, comments, anything like that, you can join the Discord. Talk Blue Jays with us, and literally any time of day. A lot to get into today. A crazy episode coming on Friday. Probably one that is way long overdue, but we wanted to save it. We wanted to sort of wait until, maybe something happened, but, that didn't happen. So we'll get into that Friday. Make sure you guys tune in. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but yeah, make sure you guys will definitely want to tune in for that one. But today, Carter, we got to talk about it. I know you've brought it up a couple times to me, wanting to get my thoughts, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell you how I'm feeling. You said save it for the podcast. I said, all right, let's just do it today. Let's talk about it, because there was a ton of comments saying it. And it goes back to, is this franchise, this organization just cheap? And that was a lot of your guys' questions. Is this just a franchise that doesn't want to spend, that won't spend money? And are they cheap, or are there external factors here that are affecting this? Carter, I guess let's start with you. Kick us off. What are your thoughts on this one? Are the Toronto Blue Jays just cheap?
I'm not going to answer the question right up front. I'm just going to go into some reasons why some people might think the Toronto Blue Jays are cheap compared to why some people might think the Toronto Blue Jays are not cheap. So yeah, we saw some comments, some different perspectives on this topic. And then during Christmas time, obviously with my family friends, we always talk about the Blue Jays. And this was a heavy hitting question at our Christmas dinner table, believe it or not. Are the Toronto Blue Jays cheap? Are they willing to spend on these big free agents? So some of the reasons why the Toronto Blue Jays could be cheap, just looking at their history of free agent signings, just their history in general. I mean, one stat right here we've gone over on the podcast, they're one of 6 teams that have never had a contract over $150 million. For a team that's consistently top 10 in payroll in baseball, kind of blows the question, where is all of this money going? How are they top 10 in payroll all the time when they haven't paid out one of these massive contracts? Just going back throughout history, Robbie Ray had that very good season, the Cy Young winning season. It didn't even seem like there was a chance they were going to extend Robbie Ray that season. Marcus Semien, obviously having a very good season as well in 2021. Don't even think on extending him. Vladdy arbitration from last season. They were arguing over $1.5 million for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Was there really a reason for that? It's $1.5 million for the best player on your team, the face of the franchise. Just a situation there that is going to have more harm than good, just going to ruin a relationship over $1.5 million. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. ends up winning that arbitration case anyway, and they end up paying him out that money that he wanted anyway, so that could have all been avoided. Just lowballing on the Vladdy contracts who came out after his MVP season, the 2021, that $150 million contract. I think it was over 7 years. For a guy that's just coming off a runner-up MVP season, again, a little bit of a slap in the face there. I get it. At that time, there's not a lot of major contracts being given out, and it is just a one-year thing. But that's one of those things where you look at a Ronald Acuna contract, getting in on that early, buying him out, and having him locked down on your team for a significant period of time. For a guy like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it worked out really well for Ronald Acuna. It's probably going to work out really well for Bobby Witt. Probably would have worked out for the Toronto Blue Jays as well, as we've seen Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just getting outbid on Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto, just these different free agents. They're in on these guys. The Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes a little bit more to the end, whereas Juan Soto didn't really seem like they were a finalist on that as well. There's a bunch more that we could go into, just the Justin Turner major signing of the offseason, no signings happening this offseason. But overall, based off what I've said, Braden, is any of that kind of sticking with you on like some validation why the Toronto Blue Jays actually are a cheap organization?
So if we're looking at it from just that perspective, and like I'm going to use a Carter First quote here, in a vacuum, I would say, yeah, that's what it's giving. It's looking like this is a cheap organization that doesn't want to spend money. Now I have to go sort of on the opposite here, and I'm going to lay some things out for you because I'll say where I stand. I don't think that this is a cheap organization. I just think they're always late to the punch here is sort of my thinking, and they miss out on opportunities. Excuse me. So let's start here. They were in on a lot of big contracts in the past two off seasons specifically. I mean, you're talking Shohei Ohtani, you're talking Juan Soto, willing to pay $700 million for one player. To me, that doesn't scream like a cheap organization. Again, highest contract offer to Corbin Burns. He decides not to take it. Doesn't scream cheap to me. There were a lot of situations where this team is willing to spend money. What it comes back to is they're not willing to spend money on the right things. And they're always going to take these long ball shots when you have a superstar sitting in the waiting area, waiting to get his contract, and you're not willing to give him the money. That's why this is coming off as cheap. And the $150 million contract to George Springer, it looks bad. And that's a bad looking contract for it being your biggest contract in Blue Jays history. It doesn't look good. And now we're at a point here, Carter, where fans are expecting to do something and you haven't been able to do it. As much as you want to say that the offers have been out there for some of these guys, and that's great to say. Great to see that you're willing to pay that, but it hasn't come to fruition. And so right now, this looks from an outsider perspective like a very cheap organization, but I fully believe that it's not. They're not a cheap organization. It's just that they were late to the punch of deciding to put together a very great roster, contending roster, and now they look desperate. They look pitiful. And now, why do players want to come here? A lot of comments laid it out. You know, the tax situation, the not winning, the not being competitive, the front office being terrible. So now they don't have an option besides overpaying. And now I don't think that this front office is willing to overpay. I think they're willing to pay market value, but I don't necessarily think they want to go out and overpay for every single signing that they make because they're so worried about the George Springer effect that now we're in this sort of state of limbo. So I want to say that they're not a cheap organization. They're top 10 in payroll almost every year. They spend money. They just don't spend money correctly. So it's not a cheap organization. They're willing to spend. It's just that there's so many dumb people managing the situation with the funds that it makes it look like this is a very dumb and cheap organization, and it's sad. I don't know.
You brought up overpaying, and I want to address that after. But we brought up the conversation: are the Toronto Blue Jays cheap? I don't think they are either. I don't think you can say that the Toronto Blue Jays are a cheap organization. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'll go into the payrolls in the second segment. But yeah, you're in on two generational guys. You're willing to give out $700 million back-to-back off seasons, and they've been willing to spend the money. They've been willing to hand out these contracts. They aren't afraid of spending it. But it's kind of what you said. It's just, where are they spending this money? Where are they allocating this money to? You got starting pitchers. You got some veterans. You made some very good signings. But the problem is, again, it's more so you're not developing within. You don't have a farm system. You don't have some of these guys on more of bargain contracts. If you can get some younger players, and this team has a bottom 10 payroll, but you have all guys that are in arbitration, all pre-arb, that aren't making these free agent salaries, I don't think it necessarily matters how high your payroll is. It depends how well you can develop. And a lot of these teams like New York Yankees, the reason why they're always at the top end of these payrolls, because they're not very good at developing players. That's just simply what it is. They get their superstars. They're an attractive organization. They're always winning. They haven't had a losing season in like 20 seasons, probably more than that. I don't know the exact year, but it's been a long time for the New York Yankees that they have been a bad baseball team. And that's why, because they can go out and pay these free agents. But looking at Ross Atkins, just looking at where he does allocate his money, just doesn't really make a lot of sense when you're looking at this current roster construction. Like you said, highest betting team on Corbin Burns. There was a report, not confirmed, but there was an AL East team that offered 7 years, $250 million. Might have been the Blue Jays, might not have been. Again, it's not confirmed, so I'm not going to say that is a thing that Ross Atkins offered. But Teoscar Hernandez had more money in that as well. Teoscar Hernandez just said at the start of the offseason wants to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Makes a lot of sense. When you got done wrong by Ross Atkins, why would you want to come back to this organization? And we got a lot of comments on a reason why Corbin Burns didn't want to come. It's the tax system, whatever. Roster construction, which is probably the more reasonable one. But some people were saying cold weather, and I just kind of wanted to address that. The MLB season goes from the end of March to October, and you have spring training in Dunedin. It's in Florida. You're playing baseball in Toronto. It's warm. Like if you summer in Canada, it's not cold all times throughout the year. It's not like we're living in an iceberg. It does get warm. So cold weather, if you're going to use that as an excuse, I think you're really reaching on a take like that. I think cold weather is the least of people's problems. And in the offseason, a lot of these guys aren't staying in Toronto. They're going back to their hometowns. They're going back to see their families. They're going back to work out with their trainers. So just want to address that. Cold weather is just a wild take for me for being a reason to not sign with the Toronto Blue Jays. But there is a bunch of different factors on why some free agents would not want to sign with the Jays. And it has a lot to do with the current management and the current team construction.
Yeah, it's not a are they cheap thing. And I know that people will argue that, and fair enough. And if they want to bring up some points, or you guys want to bring up some points, make sure you drop a comment below. I'm happy to hear you out. But I just think a team that's willing to spend $700 million, as much as you believe rumors and whatever, that's on you. But if the reports are true and everything is right, that this team is willing to drop $700 million back-to-back seasons, that isn't a cheap organization. It might be a poorly run organization, but it is not a cheap one. I know, Carter, we still got a lot to get into. There's a few things that I want to talk about just with the payroll going into next year, the luxury tax, how that's now changing in 2025, how this might affect the Blue Jays. Will they, won't they? How much will they spend? I want to get into all of that because realistically, it still matters because there are still free agents on the board. There's still money left to be spent. And we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with all that. Then, of course, in the third segment, we're going to get into our player profile, a guy that Carter's probably been looking forward to more than anybody, Mr. Ernie Clement. So stick around for all of that. We'll talk about how his season went. What can he look forward to do in 2025 as well? Stick around after the break. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. I always talk about how much I love using FanDuel because I can go and I can bet live game, and I love that. That's one of my favorite things, and I've been doing that a ton in the NFL. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm telling you guys, the live game betting, the $250 in bonus bets is just crazy to me. I think if you don't take advantage of that, you're missing out on an opportunity. I'm telling you. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. That's, again, if your first $5 bet wins. Take a lock. Make sure you get those bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, Carter, one quick thing before I know you want to get into team payroll, everything like that, where the Blue Jays sit. I just want to go over something on the luxury tax here because I think it's something that, we talk about and chat about quite a bit, but how the structure is of it and how it's all broken down, it can sometimes get a little confusing and how much goes where. Why do teams want to avoid this luxury tax? I'm going to give you a quick breakdown here. So the luxury tax threshold for Major League Baseball in 2025 is $241 million, and this is the first year with now there's 4 luxury tax thresholds now. So there used to be 3. Now they've moved it to a 4-tiered system. So like I said, this year, $241 million. Here are some of the penalties for over exceeding that $241 million. So in your first year of committing, going over that threshold, it's 20% of the contracts now have to be paid into a luxury tax. Then in your second consecutive year, it's 30% and 50% in your third consecutive year or more. So a lot of those contracts, if you start really getting over that $241 million, a lot of that money now is taken and it just adds into the bonus, right? It's all bonus money that now isn't going to the players or building your team. You might as well throw it into the universe because that money means nothing anymore to your team besides the fact that maybe you get better guys, and if you're willing to pay for that, you're willing to get better guys, more guys, whatever you want to say. It's a very interesting system, and there's a lot of little components that go into it. For the next couple of years, it will go up as well. They're always looking to raise this, to find out what the best sort of threshold for money is, because there is no, we talked about a salary cap or a salary minimum. And this isn't something baseball can do, especially now at this point when all of these contracts are being paid out for 10, 15, whatever, almost 20 years of contracts. It's impossible to do. So they now have to use this luxury tax threshold here so that it can somewhat keep some teams in check, I guess, for how much they're spending. A little ridiculous, but there's a quick little breakdown for you so you know what's going on.
It's almost like an idea of like a soft salary cap. It's really trying to deter these big market teams from overspending and spending a lot more than these smaller market teams can. But we've talked about this before. Owners in the MLB are not poor. They do have the funds. They do have the ability to spend. It's just whether they want to or they don't want to. I didn't bring this up in the first segment. I just wanted to quickly throw this in on why another reason why the Toronto Blue Jays are not a cheap organization is we talked about revenue sharing a couple podcasts ago and how much of the Toronto Blue Jays revenue they do throw back into the payroll. And they were second in the league in doing that with 75% of their revenue going into their payroll. I don't necessarily think a cheap organization is going to do that. But first segment, you talked about overpays, and I wanted to jump into that as well. Is there really overpaying in baseball when you don't have a salary cap? I don't know if you can really justify there being overpaying because you can go over that luxury tax and you can, again, make these contracts. You can pay Juan Soto, whatever it is. You're over the luxury tax. You still have the ability to do that. Yes, you're going to get penalties. Yes, again, it's not exactly what you want to do necessarily from a business perspective. And that's why this doesn't happen. That's why you can this would be the contrast to overpaying is that, for example, a guy like Ernie Clement, who we'll talk about in the third segment, you could sign Ernie Clement in theory to a 4-year, $80 million deal. But when you can get Ernie Clement for 4 years and $1 million per deal, the MLB teams are a business. The MLB is a business. So in that sense, you don't want to overpay. In that sense, you don't want to just throw money to the wolves. But strictly for baseball, is there really overpaying when there's no limits on what you can spend in an offseason?
Well, and this is why some people get very upset with how baseball is run, right? Because they're thinking, I'll just spend a ton of money. If I want to win this season, I'll just go buy everybody for a 1-year, $100 million deal. There you go. And we'll just win this year. Fans will be happy and whatever else. So baseball's a very interesting sport when it comes to the money and the contracts and everything else. And I get just as frustrated because in my head, that's exactly what somebody can do. Obviously, teams won't do that because they are a business and they are an organization that wants to make money. But yeah, you're right. Technically, no, there's not really an overpay. But as fans, as people who cover baseball, watch baseball, we all know what guys are worth to an extent. I mean, I said it myself. I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to get $500 million, if not more. And now with all of these contracts starting to come out, the money just is going to keep climbing. So no, in that sense, Carter, you're right. There isn't an overpay. It's just how much do you want the guy? And how much do you need him to build your organization out better? And so you're right in that sense. But of course, you're right. When it goes to those lesser named guys, that's where you're more talking about an overpay. Probably the Andres Jimenez deal is an overpay for what you're going to be paying him in 27, 28, Carter, or 26, 27, 28, whatever it is. That's an overpay to me. I don't think he's a guy that you want to be paying 26, 28, whatever, $24 million. That's an overpay. But how much do you need him? I guess we'll find out this season.
Well, and that's the difference is that a guy like Ernie Clement, you can find multiple Ernie Clements out in the league. So if you're going to pay over market value for a guy like that, people are going to be a lot more upset for paying for Ernie Clement paying whatever it is, $5-10 million when he actually gets to free agency. You got a guy like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. How many Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s are there in baseball, especially this season? Again, well, this ongoing debate, is Toronto a good spot for free agents? Is it an attractive location? But when you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. that says that he wants to be a Toronto Blue Jay, he would stay here for the rest of his career. is there really overpaying for a guy like that? And you look at just Toronto. Everyone in Toronto knows who Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is. You don't necessarily have to be a baseball fan. You probably have heard of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And when you got a guy with Vladdy's marketability, you got the face of the franchise. This is a guy that's going to put butts in seats just by being on the field. Again, you want it to be a competitive team. You want it to be a successful team. But people would go to the Toronto Blue Jays games just to watch Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And you pay this guy $500 million. You're going to make that money back with just having a reason to bring fans into the stadium. So in that sense, I think people are a lot more okay with overpaying for a guy like Juan Soto. Like when you really break it down to market value, is Juan Soto can be worth like $765 million for the production that he's going to have. I think in the sense you could say that's an overpay as well. But when you got a guy like Juan Soto and that production that you can't find really anywhere else in the MLB, I think a lot of people are going to be more okay with having one of the best players in baseball on their team, and they're not really going to care about the monetary value.
Well, and it's not even about like to do as much on-field stuff as you want to say, how much he contributes to the on-field performance. It's more so the fact that these guys know what the name value brings in jersey sales, everything that they sell in the ballpark can all be marketed around now Juan Soto, which in course pays that contract off just for everything that he sells through the team's revenue. So, yeah, there are a lot of different things that go into this, different aspects. Anybody that gets Shohei Ohtani, anybody that gets Juan Soto, anybody that gets Aaron Judge, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they all make money based off just the guys' names. Like my brother this Christmas got a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. jersey, Carter. And, I sort of did a quick wince because I'm like, well, this guy could be gone next year. You're just getting a jersey. But he's one of those guys, and this is I'm going to bring it back to overpay. This is why you overpay for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because for one, a guy, like you said, wants to be in Toronto, a guy that is loved by everybody in Toronto. And when I talk about everybody in Toronto, sometimes I'm talking about Toronto as an organization. Sometimes I'm talking about it as a fan base. Right now, I'm talking about it as a fan base. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. brings in money. And if you don't have him and Bo Bichette, who does this team market around? Who's your big marketing piece? Dalton Varsho, I guess, has to be. I guess he's your only guy. Maybe Alejandro Kirk, but Jesus, if that's the case, these guys are going to be making pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, I think you'd have to go more towards like Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios. If you think Alejandro Kirk is bringing guys into the stadium, I think you're having a little bit of a mental lapse, unfortunately. But I am curious for you guys. Do you think there is overpaying in baseball? What is your stance on that? Would you guys care if they spend $500 on Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? And do you agree with the small market compared to the bigger market guys, the guys that have high skill like Vladdy, like Juan Soto's, your Shohei Ohtani's, compared to your more everyday guys like your IKFs, your Ernie Clements, guys that they're kind of you can get a bunch of these guys and got a bunch of guys that have these roles to fill in for your baseball team. But we have said that we are going to get into the lottery tax stuff, and it's finally time to do that. So per Spot Track, the Toronto Blue Jays projected payroll for 2025 is $193 million. With, like Braden said, the luxury tax is at $241 million. That would mean the Toronto Blue Jays have $48 million to spend to keep under the luxury tax. But if you want to be like the Los Angeles Dodgers, you have unlimited amounts to spend. You can just defer all the money into oncoming years, and you don't have to worry about that for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. But going into some of this payroll stuff last season, the Toronto Blue Jays were projected to be $7 million over that luxury tax threshold. And Ross Atkins has said that it's going to be relatively similar in spending this offseason. We haven't really seen Ross Atkins put up to that and actually defend that because we haven't gotten a lot of signings. But there still is time. George Springer, when he signed that contract, was in January. Justin Turner signed the contract in January. So there is still time for Ross Atkins to make these signings. But yeah, they were $7 million over the threshold, obviously with a lackluster season. Traded away a bunch of that. Ended up getting under that threshold again at $233.9 million. But going over the payrolls of the Toronto Blue Jays kind of over the last couple of years. And just it kind of goes all correlates back to other Toronto Blue Jays, a cheap organization. So we'll go back to 2023. The Toronto Blue Jays were 9th in the MLB in payroll at $214.6 million. In 2022, they were 11th at $177 million. 2021, they were 12th at $150.1 million. And then I wanted to throw 2015 in here because that is a fun year to talk about, obviously, for Toronto Blue Jays fans. A year that will remain in my memory for eternity, but they were 10th in payroll that year as well with $138.3 million. And it's kind of interesting you say, like we talk about this, are the Toronto Blue Jays cheap? And this is why I don't think they are a cheap organization. Just looking at the jump from 2022 up to 2024, 2022, $177 million. 2023, they were at $233.9 million. That is a very significant increase. You're getting $58 million more dollars over the last two seasons being allocated in contracts. Is that due to some of these guys getting farther and farther in arbitration? Is that due to some more free agent signings? Absolutely it is. But you can tell that Ross Atkins is at least trying to make a good baseball team. How successful is he being is a whole nother story. But he is attempting to at least try to build a team that can be competitive and maybe make a World Series run.
Yeah, and I don't think that's ever been in the question. I don't think that anybody in Toronto Blue Jays land thinks that this organization doesn't want to make a push for a World Series. I think you got to be kidding yourself. Obviously, they do. And I always go back to execution. Are they executing it? No, they're not. It's not going well, and we're all well aware of that. But yeah, you can't say that they're not trying or that they don't care, because they've had these conversations with big name guys. They've went out and tried to make things happen. It just hasn't gone their way, and that's probably because of the situations they've put themselves in. But whatever. More on, we've talked that to death, and we're probably going to continue talking that to death. But Carter, we're sort of down in the dumps the last 2 episodes a little bit. I think we can finally get into something here that maybe lifts a little bit of spirits anyway. I think let's take a quick break. Unless you got anything else to throw in, we can take a quick break and talk some Ernie Clement right when we come back. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy, pretty much anything you can get tickets to. You'll find me and Carter at some point. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy, the excitement, it was awesome. Actually, it was. I've gone to a few now where I've used Game Time, and it makes it so much easier. I'm a big comedy guy too. I like to go to different stand-ups, and Game Time knocks it out of the park. I'm telling you guys now that Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite live events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you the only incredible deals or on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I talk about, the amount of Jets games, Blue Jays games that we've gone to. It's hard to not use Game Time. I've actually given the code, which I'll get into, Locked On MLB, to a bunch of buddies, and they said it's awesome. Getting some money off your tickets, not having those extra fees at the end, it makes everything really, really great. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Carter, it's time to have some fun on the podcast finally. Oh my goodness. Well, I hope anyway. We'll see how this segment goes. Let's talk about Ernie Clement. In our player profile, Carter, I'm lost because we've taken out guys, we've added guys in. Where does Ernie Clement rank in our player ranking profiles, whatever you want to call it? Look ahead to 2025.
Yeah, so obviously we did this at the end of the 2024 season. So with an MLB offseason, players leave, players come. So Ernie Clement was at 15 for our list, so we're going to keep him there. Obviously, some guys have left, but we're just going to roll with our list that we made at the end of the 2024 season. So Ernie Clement came to the Toronto Blue Jays 2023. At that point, we were like, nice depth signing. Got some more middle infielders. We already have an influx, but yeah, the more the merrier. I wasn't too high on Ernie Clement coming in because he didn't look that good. The Athletics didn't have that great of a year with the Guardians. But you can never have too many depth signings with some injuries, and just, baseball happens throughout a baseball year. But got his opportunity to play in 2023, played 30 games with some Bo Bichette injuries, some other injuries around the infield, and he definitely made the most of it. He was unbelievable for the Toronto Blue Jays, had a slash line of 380 with a 385 OBP, 500 slugging percentage for an OPS of 885. Him along with Davis Schneider really injected just life into that 2023 lineup. Really saved them from going down a slippery slope of kind of the 2024 offense in the first half of the season. So that gave us a little bit of positiveness, maybe some false hope to go into 2024 with. But after this season, Kevin Biggio had a pretty good end to 2023 as well. A lot of people were actually calling for Ernie Clement to be DFA'd. I was definitely not on that side. You weren't on that side either, but you obviously weren't as high on Ernie Clement as I was. When we did our bold predictions, I had 2 pretty bad ones, but Ernie Clement, I said, was going to be an everyday player in 2024. You go 1 for 3, I'll take that any day of the week. That's Hall of Fame career in the MLB right there. But in 2024, played 139 games. I'd call him that a full-time player right there. Slash line of 263, 284 on base, 408 slugging percentage for an OPS of 692. Was tied on the team for second, or was tied for second on the team in doubles with 21, tied with Dalton Varsho with 12 home runs, 51 RBIs. This is a guy that is kind of like it was the exact same as IKF. We had 2 guys on the Toronto Blue Jays that did the exact same things. Ernie Clement does not walk a lot, does not strike out a lot, contact hitter, plays very good defense. was a lot better against righties than lefties. He hit 278 against righties with a 724 OPS. With lefties, kind of struggled a little bit with a 230 average and an OPS of 626. We got anything else to add on for just stats? Any Ernie Clement insight for the people?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I wanted to get into that is a shocking statistic for me. You said Ernie Clement doesn't walk a ton. Ernie Clement doesn't really walk at all. He had 11 walks in 139 games. That is a concerning stat, especially for a contact hitter. You're looking for him to have walks, know the zone, work the zone. And yes, he puts balls in play. I'm going to go over just some of his stats here from Baseball Savant. They do a great job over there of, keeping track of all this. So his whiff rate, he's in the 96th percentile. Crazy. His squared up percentage is 99th percentile. His K percentage is 100th percentile. But yeah, the walk rate, he's in the first percentile. That is not a stat anybody wants to see ever. His chase rate, one percentile. His bat speed, 4th percentile. His barrel percentage, 12th percentile. For a contact guy, that's something that you hope he'd be able to do a little bit better, but not so much. His slugging, 29th percentile. His average exit velo, 4th percentile. Hard hit percentage, 3rd percentile. Sweet spot percentage, 51 percentile. I just, overall, Ernie Clement is just not a good hitter. It's just, he's gets contact, but he won't do much more than that. You want him to be able to walk. You want him to be able to work counts. And Ernie Clement was good this year. And I think we were happy with what he was. But Ernie Clement isn't a game breaker. You need him to be better at walking. You need him to get on base. Ideally, with the way that he plays, if he could get that walk percentage up, you're probably looking at a solid leadoff hitter eventually, maybe. But the problem is that he hasn't shown that. And I love Ernie Clement, and I love watching him play. And he is an injection of life into otherwise sometimes of a dull team. But yeah, I don't know, Carter. In that sense of the game, he's a very frustrating player to watch, but a fun player to watch because he puts the ball in play and sometimes makes things happen. The good thing with Ernie Clement is he's been a great defensive player this season. And I think that's something we didn't really expect from Ernie Clement going into it. I don't think we expected Ernie Clement to be a Gold Glove nominee. I really didn't. His range, it was in the 92nd percentile, which is crazy to think about because, I don't know if we even realized that he was as good as he was defensively. His arm strength isn't all there, and I think that's why you see him sometimes struggle from third base when he plays there. His sprint speed is in the 78th percentile. He's got pieces to be a very good baseball player, and I'm very happy with the Ernie Clement we got. I think he was way better than expected, which we'll get into when we talk about expectations. I know it might be a little bit different because you had a little bit higher expectations for Ernie Clement than I did. But just a very interesting player and a guy that when you thought Davis Schneider was going to be the up and coming, next coming of Christ, and then Ernie Clement sort of came out of the woodwork and said, whoa, I'm here as well. Don't forget about me. And then decided to have a pretty great 2024.
See, I'm going to give you a chance to take something you said back. You said Ernie Clement is not a good hitter. I'm going to let you take that back right now. I'm not going to stand for this Ernie Clement slander.
Carter, he's not a good hitter. He's had one good year, and I can't say it yet that Ernie Clement's a good hitter. The stats for a contact hitter are there, but it's one of those things again where we go back to the fact of you can't base something on a guy's one season. And so right now I'm still in the situation. I said great year, but as of right now, I'm looking at all these statistics, watching him play, and there's holes in his game that make him not a great hitter. He had a good season, but he's not a great hitter.
I'm not going to agree with that, unfortunately. I think when you have Ernie Clement, he was third on the team in average. Again, the Toronto Blue Jays hitting was not very good. But what does that mean about every single other player on the Toronto Blue Jays? Does that just mean nobody can hit? Pretty much, yeah. That's exactly what it means.
Exactly,
but with Ernie Clement, he's good against righties. He's not the best hitter of all time, but if he can be around a league average hitter, maybe slightly under that, with all the value he provides defensively, there's definitely a role, obviously, for Ernie Clement on this team. I see him being a platoon hitter probably for the Toronto Blue Jays, going mostly against right-handed pitchers. But with Ernie, he got nominated for defensive Gold Glove at third base. Was tied for second in the league in defensive runs saved at third base at 10. Guess who is higher than Ernie Clement at third base? Take a guess.
Higher at third base.
With
I don't
defensive
know.
runs saved, led the league. One of the ex-Blue Jays talk about all the time on this podcast. One guy loves it in our comment section. It's Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman was the only
I
guy
don't even want to
ahead
hear.
of.
Yeah, great. Oh my god, I'm done. I was done talking about Matt Chapman like a year ago. Never mind now.
We always got to throw in the Matt Chapman comments when we can. But yeah, Matt Chapman, the only one that had more defensive runs saved at third base than Ernie Clement. When we talk about Ernie Clement, it's a little bit interesting now with the current situation that the Toronto Blue Jays have. When you look at the infield, Bo Bichette obviously is your shortstop. Andres Gimenez, you don't go make that trade with Spencer Horwitz if he's not going to be your everyday second baseman. So there still is a hole at third base. But then you have guys like Will Wagner, you have guys like David Schneider, you have Elvis Martinez, you have Ernie Clement. Where is Ernie Clement going to fit into this role? Right now, if you're talking about defense, Ernie Clement makes the most sense to play at third base, especially when Will Wagner, Elvis Martinez haven't played a lot of third base. But if you have an infield, Ernie Clement as kind of your everyday guy with Andres Gimenez, unless he takes some steps, again, you're really limiting your offensive upside right now with this current situation with the Toronto Blue Jays. I think if Ernie Clement can be a guy that you rely on coming off the bench, a guy that can play literally anywhere in the infield, a guy you rotate in when some of your full-time guys need some rest days, that's definitely not a bad thing for the Toronto Blue Jays to have in their arsenal.
No, I agree with you. I think that Ernie Clement has a spot on this team and has earned it. I think that last season was fantastic. I'm just looking forward to 2025 to see if he can continue with how he was playing and develop more so after having a season under his belt. That's what I'm really looking forward to with Ernie Clement. And I do think you're right. There is a spot for him on this team, and I don't think he can be overlooked. But in saying that, let's get into the review. What do you give him as a grade? Because, I think we might be a little bit different here. And I know that I was a little bit negative towards Ernie Clement, but I do like how he's played. And I thought it was a great season from Ernie Clement. So I didn't really want it to be slander. I just think I want to see more from him, and I need to see more from him because it's hard to judge a player off of the one major league season that he's really had. So Carter, I'll let you kick things off and I'll sort of go from there.
So with Ernie Clement, the expectation, I know I was pretty high on him this offseason, but we were doing that as part of a bold take segment. So it was a bold take. It's not exactly something I was going to die on the hill on, but I'm glad it did work out. For what I wanted from Ernie Clement, I did want him to turn into that everyday player. That is what we got from Ernie Clement. So I'm going to give this guy with his defensive rating as well a B+. I think this is a guy, I'll go up to A-. I'm going to switch up right away. Giving A- for Ernie Clement, a guy that just played unbelievable defense. The Ross Atkins specialty. Loves a guy that's going to play defense. Is probably why he's going to have a role on this team in 2025. But with Ernie Clement, if he can, again, be a league average hitter and play unbelievable defense, that's kind of how this Toronto Blue Jays team is trending. So eventually you're going to need some guys that are going to hit for power. Ernie Clement isn't necessarily that guy for what he is worth and what he did for the Toronto Blue Jays in 2024. I think A- is definitely a fair grade.
I like A-. I'm right there with you. I'm a B+. Again, no, I wasn't as high on him. Again, it's one season. For the season he gave us, I was very, very happy with everything Ernie Clement did, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It's just, to me, again, it goes back to the same thing. I want to see more from him, and I think I will get to see more from him, and I hope that it goes well because I do have faith that he can be a good player and a very valuable piece to this team. Where does he fit? Yeah, that's the big question now with the Andres Gimenez signing or trade. Now it's going to be interesting to see, what moves happen still within the offseason, what playing time Ernie Clement will get. That'll be in question for sure.
It's going to be a roller coaster of a ride. Hopefully there are some free agent signings. Hopefully there's a little bit more competition in that infield for a guy like Ernie Clement. Because as much as I do love Ernie Clement, I would love a guy like Alex Bregman a lot more. That guy can come in, that can hit 25 home runs. But at this point, I think we're kind of down to maybe getting one major free agent signing. And if we're going to get that signing, it's got to be in the outfield. So saying that, thank you guys for watching. The likes, comments, subscriptions, everything recently has been much appreciated. If you guys are watching this, it is 2025. We have gotten to the year of 2025. This would
Happy
be
New
Year's Day. Happy New Year to all the Toronto Blue Jays fans. Hopefully we can leave the 2024 dismay in 2024, and hopefully we just can have a positive outlook on 2025.
Yeah, make sure you guys tune in for the episode on Friday. That's crazy that just, I didn't even think about that. It's like when you're a kid.
Now, eh?
It's like when you're a kid and you're writing down like 2020 or something, and it's like, oh, and you're 3 months down the line, you're still writing 2020, even though it's 2021. It's sort of that effect on me. I'm just locked on right now, so that I'm not really paying attention to the years, I guess. In saying that, guys, tune into the episode on Friday. It is going to be crazy. One that you guys, I can almost guarantee the comment section will go pretty nuts about. So I'm not going to spoil it. I'm really not going to spoil it. Just tune in for that one because I'm going to say let's get all of the hate out on the Friday episode because that's what we're doing. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you're new here, and we'll talk to you guys then.